Hello, I'm Somi Arian. I'm a tech philosopher and the founder of InPeak. My guest on today's podcast is Raoul Pal, co-founder and CEO of Real Vision. Recently, Raoul came onto the InPeak platform with Carly Reilly for one of her token-gated sessions, which was available to OPJ and Real Vision holders. Now, Real Vision is also using InPeak for their token-gated content, and I had a chance to speak with Raoul. We covered two big topics. One was about big banks and corporations coming into Web3, and the second one was the future of tokenized communities, social media, and tokenized education. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So Raul, before I press record, I told you that what an honor it is to have you here. I have been very much influenced by the work that you have done over time. I think in many ways, I wouldn't be here doing the things that I'm doing and building the platform that I'm building if it wasn't for people like yourself, and other amazing people in the space that have really helped shine a light on what is possible with this technology. So you've definitely had a big impact on opening my eye. But now today, what I wanted to discuss with you is, maybe if you think about who is our target audience today, I would say that it will be people who are working in big corporations, big companies, banks that are listening to this and they're thinking, I don't get what this is about. They're like, they think that this is just about some speculation, some this whole Web3 space. So let's try and explain between the two of us. Let's try and see, and I want to get your take on, let's try and simply explain to, let's say somebody is listening to this in JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley and HSBC. Let's try and explain to them, what is Web3? Why does this technology matter?
So if you're an investment bank, it's really straightforward. You are the gatekeeper to your clients, and everybody has to come through you. And occasionally you might hold dinner and get some clients together or an event, but that's it. So you don't have a network effect that others leverage. They have to go to you for that. Web3 enables distributed networks of people and people to be able to share in the success of that network. So imagine if Morgan Stanley had tokenized, and I've been speaking to an investment bank who's looking at doing this, a smaller investment bank, boutique investment bank, who've tokenized their clients. And I'm looking at doing it with the exponential age asset management to create a token around our clients. So now your clients and you share in the success, because the value of a network is driven by the number of connections between the people on the network and the number of people on the network. So if Morgan Stanley were to have a Morgan Stanley token, and that token is your access to the Morgan Stanley world, but not just via the salespeople or the websites, but actually to the other customers themselves. Now, what could you do? What value could you create without the need of the investment bank in the middle? But the investment bank still gets fees because the network value goes up, or maybe they take, every time there's a transaction, a small part. But imagine how disruptive that is to having salespeople or M&A bankers or any of that stuff, when a client at one end can speak directly to the other. They're on the Morgan Stanley platform. They're authenticated. They are who they are. And so now they can network with each other in a way that you can only do at these big giant events, which investment banks love to be controlling over. Who's talking to. What you allow is that freedom of information, exchange of ideas, and the leveraging of a network. That makes it very valuable to join that network. So Morgan Stanley creates a tangible asset out of an intangible. The intangible is they got a bunch of really good clients that can do business. The tangible, and a salesperson knows, if I get these clients together, they'll probably do more business than if I keep them apart. But investment banks don't think that way. They want to keep everybody separate, don't speak to each other. Same with asset management firms. But actually, if you put people together and say, you're now a participant in this network, then all that economic activity on the network drives the value of the network higher. So everybody benefits, the bank and the customers, and everyone has a value for being part of that network. So it's much the same as, as clubs. You buy a membership to a club, only for the fact that you want to meet the other people in the club and use the facilities. Now, club memberships don't go up in value, generally speaking, apart from gated golf clubs and stuff like that, where there's a limited supply. They don't go up in value because none of the benefits accrue to the club itself. They just get the people coming in, buying drinks and paying for subscriptions. But if the club were to participate in the economic benefits that getting all those people together creates, then it's worth a lot more money. It's a really simple concept behind Web3, which is an alignment of interest and a removal of middlemen at the center of everything. Doesn't mean they don't play a role. They can be the facilitators, the organizers, the creators of ideas, the synthesizers. But if you allow the network to operate itself, it's like in the old days, you used to have to phone, before my time, you used to call the operator and say, hey, put me through to Somi. And then we got phone numbers. And suddenly what happens? Business explodes because you can call everybody directly. And then it became even easier with the rise of mobile phones and all the information at your fingertips. These are just networks, typical Metcalfe's law network effects. And the value that accrues goes exponential because there's all of the people working for the network to make it valuable. So another classic example is Facebook. So Facebook is a classic Web2 story, which is they provide you the utility of being able to connect with people, sell stuff, do whatever you want on their network. They own the network, the shareholders own the network, and then they monetize you as you use the network, ads, other fees. Now, Facebook was a very powerful business and still remains so to this day. But imagine if the shareholders got rich and everybody else got taken advantage of, really. But they got the utility. That was the trade-off. Imagine if Facebook had given every single user shares in Facebook. Imagine what that would have done to that company. It would have been easily the world's largest company because you are now a shareholder. We've seen this with governments, right? When I was young in the UK, we privatized British Telecom. And privatizing British Telecom was a way to give economic participation that generated both economic benefits for government, the company itself, and the people. So, these are not new concepts. Tokenization just makes it really easy to authenticate. If you think of a share, it's really difficult to authenticate. I don't have a share certificate. How do you authenticate who you are, what you are, how you belong to the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders? It doesn't work. But tokenization allows that instantaneously because it can become your identity. So your Morgan Stanley token can be your Morgan Stanley token, and that gives you access to everything in the Morgan Stanley world, much like you'll have a client ID. But it allows you to move elsewhere with that without giving up your Morgan Stanley details, because maybe Soho House want to take Morgan Stanley people. And they say, well, if you've got a token, you get discounted membership. Okay, now you're leveraging other people's networks. As opposed to giving your client identifier at Morgan Stanley, we can't verify it, but a token you can verify. So there's so many ways of which it becomes your digital ID. It creates the network effects, and then you've got the smart contract element, which is every single thing we as humans do is contractual. Every single thing, including this. Society functions via contracts: verbal, understood, explicit, implicit, explicit, and written all sorts of different ways. Now, all of those, if we go to the investment banking industry, every derivative contract, every OTC derivative contract is vaguely unique. Yes, sure, it might be a swap, but it might have certain terms, or it could be an option. That is a contract. It's a unique contract. Now, right now, it's a nightmare to settle all of this stuff, to understand who owns what, to sweep the collateral, to figure out anything that happens within the whole ecosystem. It's opaque. There's all these ISDA complications. Have you signed the ISDA? Banks have backlogs of ISDAs. It's all a mess. Now, yes, some of it's gone to centralized exchanges, but you can do all of this on a smart contract. So I can buy from Morgan Stanley a call option on the euro. I don't have to sell it back to their desk. I can sell it back to Deutsche Bank. because in that contract is the code of what it is. And if it pays out, it pays out. So it's, everything, insurance contracts, ticketing, almost every form of digital identification. Your driver's license is a contract. Your passport is a contract. They're all contracts. And it's so much more efficient to have these that instantaneously settle and are verified by a distributed network, because therefore you can't have bad actors as easily, because you can find out who they are. And it has to be verified by the network. So you can't fake your Morgan Stanley ID. Your token works or doesn't work. And because they're bearer assets, you hold them yourself. So you can allow authentication or not. So there is, it is a complete change of global business model and how behavioral economics fits into the modern society. And people don't understand it because they think it's about cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrency is the value of that network of which it's a pawn. So, of course, they go up and down a lot because these networks are new. But imagine if you owned a token on the entire global value of the mobile phone network. What is that worth? Trillions of dollars. Now imagine, all of the fees that accrue from using the network. The same can be said of almost any network. And so these things are going to accrue extraordinary amounts of tangible values that used to be intangibles. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah. So let's try to explain this idea of smart contracts for Web2 companies that are thinking about coming into the space. So I give this example of, let's say in Web2, if I wanted to get, say, 28,000 people on my platform, or 30,000 people on my platform, I would have to pay so much money to say a Facebook and all these other kind of gatekeepers of data, right? In a way that, like, it's basically you're kind of like at their mercy, and you would have to spend so much money to get those people to actually come into your platform, log into the platform, create an account. So just to get followers, because you have to pay for followers separately, you have to pay for engagement separately, right? So if you have following on, say, for example, Instagram, you don't own that following. You have to pay to get the followers, then you have to pay to get engagement. Then you have to pay to get them onto your platform and maybe eventually get their email. But tokens and smart contracts makes it possible for a whole new level of network effects where companies and what we call communities. So that's another thing we should explain to them. What is community? What is a community in Web3, right? So we're going to come to that. But these smart contracts are making it possible for a new way of marketing and new way of, expanding your network that was never possible before. For example, unstoppable domains have got 3 million people who have a unstoppable domain so far, and they've got like 700,000 people in their mailing list, and they've got so much going on for them, right? All I had to do was like take their smart contract address, put it in my platform, and then give the entire unstoppable domain community access to my platform. And how bullish is that? And imagine that now, if you could do the same thing between, let's say, HSBC had a token, right? HSBC had a token for all of their staff. And then maybe then within their company, maybe they had a separate token for people who work in marketing, and then they had a separate token for people who work in HR. And now imagine if the HR people from HSBC could easily collaborate with the HR people from JP Morgan, just because they have they both have tokens, right? And now you could create a whole new level of network effects. If you create conferences, if you want to share resources, and then if you had the same.
Well, it becomes even bigger than that. Is even when you think about managing a corporation. Mm-hmm. So if one of the things you want your teams to collaborate, and you pay bonuses based on that. Well, if you go into the room and you show your QR code, and it says that you've met with these people, right? You've got a way of having a quantifiable bonus structure. There is also another thing that most companies have, is the the people who do particularly well are very in demand. So everybody wants more of their time. I think at some point we will just tokenize time. So if there's a HSBC token and you happen to be the amazing IT person that everybody wants to use, well, you have to pay with tokens. And so you've got a free market in people's time. That becomes very powerful in allocation of resources, because if I go to that guy and I don't have a pressing urgent need, but that guy's currently $200 an hour, I'm not going to go. I'm going to go to the other guy who's almost as good, but is trading at half the price. So you get an efficient allocation of resources within a corporation, and it happens at economic level overall as well. So there are so many ways that we haven't even started that we can do with these smart contracts and the tokens. And the smart contract is basically code that settles the contract, that tells you the rules of the contract and how it's settled. It's as simple as that. And that's why anything could be kind of stored on it. It's basically storing something on a blockchain.
Yeah, we need to also explain this idea of programmability of tokens, right? For example, we created these tokens that are programmed in a way that after 45 days, they will disappear from your wallet. They will get burned, right? So this is a new way of, so we're giving guest pass, that we're using it as a guest pass. So you can program that in a way that, when you do certain amount of activity on Discord or, on other social channels, and eventually we'll build that into our platform, where when people have got a certain amount of activity, let's say, for example, we're going to build this thing where whenever people watch, 10 or 5 or however many Real Vision videos, that they will automatically get a certificate that says that they got this thing, right? So then that certificate will be connected to your token, and your token will be upgradable. So you will be like, for example, we've got this thing with our tokens where you start on, it's all about, that's what we call InPeak. It's all about like reaching your peak potential, right? So we've got this idea that when you first get your token, you're on level 0 of Mount Fuji. And then you go from level 0, which is base camp, you go to then level 1 heights, then you go to level 2, pinnacle, then you go to level 3 summit, and you get to the peak, right? You eventually get to the peak. So then you start on the next mountain, you go to Mont Blanc, so it's like, then you go to the next mountain, which is like Kilimanjaro, right? So we have got these 6 mountains, and you have these 36 stages, and it might take you 5 years to complete that. But now somebody could look at your token. Just by taking a look at your token, they could immediately say, and you place that on your profile. Who needs a CV? You look at that immediately, and you immediately know that this person has a depth of level of understanding of Web3 or, this specific topic. Now imagine, how is that going to completely disrupt, something like HR? Like today I spoke to somebody who has left one of the big banks and then went and worked in crypto, and then she was laid off. And as I was talking, I actually asked her, I said that, do you know Real Vision? And she said, no. I was like, okay, so like, where do I go from here? Like, how can you not know Real Vision, right? So these are the kind of things that then all I have to do is look at, does she have a POAP? Does she have, these tokens can be programmable in a way that they're all connected to each other. And, and on the platform, I can look at like people who are, if
just think of education, work experience, anything, they can all be done, all NFT, all certification for everything will be NFTs, because then you take it around with you. You've got authentication in seconds. You don't have to look for your old school certificate that you've stuffed in a drawer somewhere and you can't remember where it is. All of that becomes much easier to manage. Your life becomes much easier. You have one wallet, all your authentications are in there, and you can do all of that. And it, as I said before, it supercharges behavioral economics. So behavioral economics is basically gamification of the global economy. It's human incentives. It's basically psychology and behavioral sciences. And how you incentivize people is much easier when you've got a token-based system. Basically, that is not far off what Facebook did with the like button and stuff like that. Some of them, they're using emotion as the token essentially. But basically, you can incentivize people to take certain action. Now, games have done this for years. That's why games have scaled so big that they're bigger than all other media added together. Because because of the behavioral incentives within the game. You get here, then you get that. You come here, and then you get that. Can you take it from one game to the other? Well, that comes down to blockchain. It's at every fundamental level of everything we do is human economic activity changes because of blockchain technology.
Absolutely. The only thing I would say, though, is that there's been a damage done to the reputation of the space because of what happened. So how can I explain? Because every time I'm trying to explain,
because they're looking at the wrong thing. Well, I can't help you. They have to understand that this is like having the telephone or the internet, right? It's not, I don't like it, or it goes up and down in price. It's irrelevant what you think. The technology genie is out of the bottle. The technology is not going away. And it's growing at an extraordinary pace. And we've already seen California starting to try car documents on the internet. We're seeing real estate. We're seeing the European Investment Bank using bonds. We're seeing various countries experimenting with currencies, central bank digital currencies. We're seeing it's at every level. So everybody's opinion is absolutely irrelevant right now about what they think and what it should be. And, oh my God, FTX. It's nothing to do with all of that. That is just one of the manifestations of how people can utilize this market. And that's buying and selling securities or tokens or whatever. In financial markets is full of that, Currency, everybody does it almost every day without even realizing it. They're trading currencies when they buy something off the US Amazon website. People don't even know, but financialization of everything is there. So, should stuff be regulated? Of course. But that is not the technology. The technology is all of the things we're talking about, is how to leverage behavioral science and technology itself with distributed ledger systems to disrupt almost every business model, because it's more efficient, it's faster, and it's safer. And in this world, it's really important. We can't navigate this world any longer with KYC. We have to go to my bank, get a letter signed, go and find some utility bill, put that. It's ludicrous. The whole lot can be done in 1 second on blockchain. Now, India's done this, but not on blockchain. They have something called India Stack, and you authenticate yourself with your fingerprint or your retina scan. And within that, you can attach what's known as India Stack, which is all of your KYC documentation, including your medical records and your university certificates. And I can go into a bank and open a bank account with my fingerprint. I don't need a wallet. I don't need a passport. I don't need anything, because it's all in there. They see it all. They authenticate it. Done. Seconds. Now think of how many staff you can save. Think of the costs that you save. Think of how much happier your customers are if they don't have to do all of this shit every time you try and do something. Imagine having one authentication where all your KYC document is. So all of this is happening. And I speak to Google, Facebook, I speak to LinkedIn, I speak to Meta, all of these networks. They're all going down this route.
How far do you think we are? Let's say if somebody is sitting in a big corporation right now looking at this, how far is this realistically for them to actually feel the pinch?
Look, we've just seen this with AI. We knew it was coming. We all knew it was coming. And then it came in a way that shocked us to our core. I mean, everybody is like, okay, everything has changed. Society's changed. We don't even know what it means for education. We don't even know what it means to be a human in certain aspects anymore. The industries we thought wouldn't be disrupted, the creative industries, were disrupted first. Right? So the scale of what is happening in AI and how fast that came, that was the fastest adoption of any product ever. 20 days, 0 to 11 million people. And if you listen to the CEO of Microsoft, he's saying the same thing. It's like blockchain will have that moment when something happens. India's already testing blockchain CBDCs.
Yeah.
And I spoke to the chief fintech officer of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and he's like, oh my God, you should see India's software application for the CBDC. It's basically like cash. So I can just flick you a 50 rupee note and it goes to you. It's also private. And the way of using cash in a way that is really simple for people, that is recorded on the blockchain so they understand their money supply and all of the elements of economics that they can do it and running an economy. That's just one of these things. So, if you're an investment bank, every part of your borrowing and lending is toast. It's all gone because it'll happen on a blockchain ledger, and you will be as an investment bank, you will be a wholesaler to that system. Much like the option traders tend to be wholesalers into the, listed option market, stuff like that. So I don't know if it's tomorrow or whether it's in 3 years. But if you wait too late, you will not be ready. Somebody else will eat your lunch. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I'm super excited about is where AI meets blockchain. And this is what we're going to do on our platform. When you go to Discord, there's so much noise, right? Like you have a few Discord channels. I don't know how many Discord you are in, but if you have like 100 Discords, each of them is pinging constantly and people are posting. So we are going to use AI to condense the data and like figure out exactly what is suitable for you. So because if our platform is going to have hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands, then eventually millions, I actually looked at how many creators do you think are there on YouTube? There are 58 million creator channels on YouTube, and there are 51 million companies on LinkedIn. So because I was trying to figure out what's our market size, and that's roughly our market size, 50 million creators. Because all these creators, what they're going to do is they're going to use, the way I see it, what we are designing is that you use YouTube, Twitter, other things as your top of the funnel. You have your free content on these things, and then we're going to enable you to have all of your token gated content in one place on InPeak. And then we are going to use AI to help condense this information so that we can create a recommendation engine so that you are not being pulled in so many different directions, and you can slowly, this machine learning algorithm will learn what's important to you. For example, if I'm part of 20 communities, there are certain things that I want to know. I want to know when there is a token upgrade or token drop. I want to know when there's an event that's important to me, like these kinds of things. And then you will only get a small stream of important information that matters to you.
But also, right now, all the power of the network is owned by Google and Facebook because they have the identification of each person and what activity. So we can use Google Analytics to get some of that information. And that's why we use Google, because we get some of the information. Now, this is a publicly available ledger. And so it's what's known as a social graph. So what's in people's wallets will identify that they went to this concert, they bought this ticket, they've got this insurance company, they do all of the things that we will use smart contracts will be in your secure wallet. And those are verifiable on the chain. So therefore, AI, machine learning, will be able to just look at, well, if that person bought Beyonce tickets and they're a member of Bored Ape Yacht Club and they do this, they're likely to buy Gucci, right? And what you're doing is putting the power outside of the Google network and giving it to the network itself. So again, which is why it accrues value, because it takes value out of the Google network. Now, interesting enough, Google understand this. They understand that this is a fight, and they understand that they're going to have to go here eventually, because if not, they get disrupted. So they're going to have to disrupt themselves.
Yeah, but the thing is that you have to really deeply know Web3. And
you shouldn't do. You shouldn't have to know anything about it.
For Google,
they've got amazing people. I've done the Google Talks. I presented to their website. I presented to 600 people, and of Google, and they're all ultra smart. They totally get it. I know all of the Meta team. They're amazing people. They get it deeply. So, and the LinkedIn team, and even people like Ticketmaster. So don't ever underestimate.
No, I definitely don't underestimate. I am very, very close actually with the LinkedIn team. I see what, where I know where kind of like where their thoughts are. And honestly, they're nowhere near thinking about this level of like the understanding of tokens and the way that these technologies can work. What they will probably do is buy, this is the innovator's dilemma, right? So they will potentially like end up like buying, another company that is building that. But most people that I see in LinkedIn, for example, they are not really deeply Web3 people. And I think that even
but I know there's a whole Web3 team because I've spent some time with them. So they are, but they have to be very careful
that's
how they move without disrupting themselves. Right?
Yeah.
Google makes billions of dollars in advertising. And if it gets rid of all the middlemen and the identifiers, then the advertising revenue goes away. So they need to be absolutely sure that what they're doing is not going to unbalance their existing network.
But a startup coming in, and I want to, use this opportunity to take your advice on this. A startup coming in, like, where I'm talking about myself, right? And you have a chip on your shoulder, and you're like, like these guys, like I've worked so hard to build all this content, and I've done all these things on different platforms, and each of them have got their own algorithms in a way that basically their algorithm is optimized for making you create a lot of content, and each of them wants you to customize that content in a way that, like, for example, Gary Vee in 2015 or 16, he said at that time that he had 17 people working on his content, 17 people across the different social media. Who has got that? Right? Not many people have that ability to do that, right? So basically what you're doing, you're kind of like the dinosaur that turned into fuel for these algorithms, right?
You're working for them.
You're working for them, right? So that's what I want to change, right? So I was like, okay, I want to build something that puts the power back into the creators, creators. And the thing is, I don't have anything to lose. Like when I think about it, like these companies, they have a lot to lose. I don't have anything to lose. And I figured out that there's this loophole, maybe you call it loophole, or this possibility that is there for the taking, with smart contracts, and the way that you can connect communities and you can enable them to monetize, and they can decide the cadence of content that they want to put out, that they're not going to be under this immense pressure. You think about it, if you want to be successful, you have to, to break the algorithm in TikTok, you have to create 5 pieces of content a day to get ahead, and to be like 5 pieces of content a day. Who has got time? And then you have to do the same thing on YouTube, and then you have to do the same thing on Reels. This is not sustainable. And as somebody who feels very deeply with what the pain of the creators are, so I want to create a platform where people, if we are going to have advertising, that it will be opt-in, that you will get a share of it, because you have that token. So every time you will continually, accumulate tokens. One other thing is, when you, let's say you, Raoul Pal, you're on the platform, and somebody wants to message you, they have to spend tokens to message you, and you will decide how many tokens you want to, you put your price. You will say, to message me, you need to spend 500 Real Vision tokens, right? For example, right? Like if you have a fungible tokens. And the other thing is, we're going to make it possible for you to use your own token, not necessarily our token, like we can make it possible for people to use their own tokens. So you put the, if you build from scratch, you build it in a way that with the creator in mind, with the, people in mind, because when Facebook was doing this, when Facebook was building, I don't think that they even thought about this, right? Like, it's not that they were evil. It was just that they kind of fell into this opportunity and they took it. Like, I don't think that they necessarily,
it wasn't possible. It wasn't possible back then. It wasn't possible.
It wasn't possible. But now it's possible, and they can't go back, right? Because their business model doesn't allow them. But like I said, like somebody like me, I can come in, I have nothing to lose. I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to make it as easy as possible for people to make money, to make, to actually live, not in a way that you're just living to feed that algorithm, right? And if you are training AI, you need to know that you are training AI. Like, we don't want to be like this fossils, like, that are being used just to kind of fuel this thing. We're like, I in my book, I give the example. I say that it's kind of like the way that Facebook and these other social channels, the way that it worked was that they were like, okay, they come into your, imagine you're living in a house and in your backyard there's an oil well, right? And you don't know how to use it. You don't know how to refine that oil, to use it. So somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to give you some free food, I'm going to give you, some croissants, and let me refine this oil that is in your backyard, right? But then they refine the oil and they take it away. They walk away with it. That's what's happened to our data on social media, right? And we are like that. They've given us some free email. They've given us a thing where we can connect with our friends, and then they've taken away all of our data and they train their machines. And what happens now is that machine is going to make you, like essentially like not usable. Like we're gonna have no use.
Yeah, because we're slaves to their networks,
yeah,
as opposed to participants, and it's as simple as that.
We need to change that.
And the more people, so if you were in the first 10,000 YouTube channels, you could have done really well. And there's 58 million of them, right? Nobody cares about you.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody makes any money except the big breakthrough. Exactly the same has happened in music. So Spotify utterly destroyed what artists got paid for, which was making their music. So they get nothing now. I mean, literally nothing for millions and millions and millions of streams. So artists like the Rolling Stones, why do the Rolling Stones tour at 80 years old? They're both, Keith and Mick, are 80 this year. Why are they touring? It's because it's the only way to make money. Because if you think about what touring is, it's a concentration of people in a certain moment and time. So it's scarcity and experience. Spotify has changed that. I used to remember when I grew up, I used to go to the record store when the latest album was out, buy it, have the cover, go and play it. It was an experience. And now there's no experience. It just comes, it's mixes with your thousands of other songs that you've got on a Spotify list. So we've lost that. So people go and pay huge money to go to concerts. So the music is free, but the concerts are $200, $300, $400 just to go to a concert. And that's how the artists can make money. But because they lost control of their own IP because of the algorithm.
And we are very close for that to happen to all of us. We are almost there, but we still have an opportunity to change that. And I really think that blockchain technology and, the combination of...
Well, think of how many companies pour gazillions of dollars into trying to create targeted ads, and how many of them actually work? Not that many. So you're always testing. Everyone says you need to test. What that is you are going to pay, and you might have a lottery ticket chance of success. And yet we just keep doing it because it used to work.
So now what will happen is that in a platform like ours, what will happen is that, let's say I want to reach, so right now it's early days, and the space is very small, and I can simply come to you and say, hey, I've got this content, I'm going to give free access to all Real Vision users, and they can discover us, right? But in the future, what will happen is that I will have to pay you. I will pay you to say, hey, I want to get access to your audience. These are people that listen to you, and I want to give them, maybe free trial, but I pay you for, a certain amount of tokens, because you have worked hard to build that audience, right? And you own that relationship with your audience. You can, technically is that I can simply add your contract address and give them access. But the only thing is, how do they know, right? Like, so you still need this. You need this to be amicable. You need this to be in a way that you work together, you collaborate together, right? Because otherwise, I could basically kind of how they did this with OpenSea and was it that Rare, Looks Rare, right? Like Looks Rare, and Blur did the same thing, right? So you would say, you know what, if we are going to do this, we are going to give tokens to all the OpenSea users, so you steal them. That's not going to work in the long term. It's not going to work like that. Because
you won't be able to figure it out. Already in my wallet, I get airdropped so much stuff. You don't know what's a scam, what's a spam. So how do you notify people, right? Email is actually
Exactly.
quite powerful still. It's quite difficult to not use Twitter or social media and or email. That'll get solved eventually as well.
So this is, I think these are some of the things that it's important to kind of explain to people why this is important for their businesses, why this is important for their companies, whether they are big corporations, why they need to get into this, just like the way that they decided that they figured out they need to be on social media, they need to have some kind of presence, they have to
Let
create
me
content.
tell you a little story about this. I got asked by the marketing group of Great Britain to go and present about Web3 by the chairman. And he's like, listen, they're going to be a tough crowd because they're quite stodgy, white and old. But, people need to hear this, much like you're saying. So it's black tie at Claridge's. And anybody who doesn't know, Claridge's is a very fancy hotel and had to wear the dinner suit, all of this stuff. So I gave my talk. And I did it kind of in the round, allowing questions as we go, because a lot of people's knowledge is, different parts of the journey. At one point, a lady stood up who was a chief marketing officer from a very big firm based in the UK and said, and she must have been in her late 50s, and she's like, this is all a scam. This whole thing is a scam. This is like, this is evil. This is terrible. And what happened was about 20% of the room stood up and applauded. Right, that's where we are in this space. The UK is well behind the US. South Korea is probably ahead of the US. There's different people. UK regulations better, Switzerland, Singapore, but this is the split still of people like I always step back and don't take this personally. I think why the reaction? Like if somebody said, "Oh, we've got mobile phones," somebody's going to go, "Oh, that's outrageous." Like, no, it's just a technology. Why the emotional response? And what it was is that chief marketing officer had to go from the old world of television advertising and radio advertising to internet. And they'd won. They got through. That's why they're the chief marketing officer. They survived that massive transition everybody had to go through. And then they're there in their late 50s at the peak of their career, and they're told, sorry, that's not the peak. We got Web3 to go now. And they're like, I'm not doing it. I can't take this on board. I can't deal with it. And that's an issue that I think people will still find is even if you're watching this and you're having an emotional reaction to it, you need to ask why you're having that reaction. Right? It's like we all have an emotional reaction to AI, and we know why. It's because am I worthless as a human? What is my sense of worth? And they're okay to ask these questions. But if you're having an emotional reaction to blockchain technology because FTX went bust, well, then you should have that about the entire banking system and every other startup that's ever happened that's gone bust. You don't. You distance yourself from them. And so you need to say, well, not all banks, the entire system of money is terrible because Lehman went under. Yes, there's structural issues with the banking system, but we don't draw that conclusion. But in this, they do. Why? Because it's a big threat. Nobody knows what it means. My business model has to change. Therefore, I can shout at the clouds or I can embrace it. My view is you always have to embrace your own disruption, because if not, you'll just be the angry bystander watching it all go by.
Exactly. Otherwise, we would not go from apes to where we are now. So last question, because I know that we are at time. I appreciate that you need to go. So tell me about your thoughts on, and this is potentially opening up for a future podcast to bring you back, but thinking about what are your thoughts on this whole idea of whether the universe, whether this experience that we have, whether this is a simulation. Do you think about it like with metaverse? Do you think about it?
Well, the question is are we in a simulator now? Are we somebody else's?
So the gentleman that I sent you TED Talk of Don Hoffman, he's been on my podcast and he's been on Tom Bilio's podcast 3 times as well. So check it out. But super interesting because if that's the case, maybe this, and if there truly we are going towards a singularity, as Ray Kurzweil would say, these are people that I would love to see on your podcast, by the way. I really want to see a conversation between you and Ray Kurzweil, with Donald Hoffman, because they will be so interesting. But if we are going towards this singularity, and with this exponential thing that's happening with AI, what if we manage to crack that code, like that we figure out what is behind that, right? What is the singularity? Could it be the moment that we figure that out? I mean, yeah. Do you think about these things? And
the smaller thought is that by 2039, and this is from a quote by Mo Gaudat, who ran Google X, so he knows a lot about AI, and he's by 2039, Ray Kurzweil's idea of a singularity is so obvious. By the end of 2029,
we will have
AI will be smarter than a generalized human being.
Yeah.
So a generalized AI is smarter than the general human being. Right now, it's much better that at any human at any specific task, but not in general. By 2039, if you continue the accelerated rate, which has been proven to be right, much like Moore's law, then you get to it being 1,000 times more intelligent. So that is the equivalent of Einstein versus a fly. And we are the fly. If you think of the difference between humans and apes, what is that difference? Is it a magnitude of 50x, 20x, 10x, whatever? 1,000x. Right. So we don't stand a chance.
How do you feel about it?
It is what it is. Now, what happens if it's unstoppable as well? What happens if somebody figured this out 1 million years ago? And the way to populate planets is to start bacteria of different types that exist. And they know that they evolve, and then they eventually evolve this way, because this is what evolution goes to, because we then invent computers. When you look at human genomes, it's code. Humans are just code. The atomic structure is code. So these are things that are codified. So why could we not have been planted by some other society? I mean, I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't really care. But the point being is humans have this human-centric view that we are everything. And here we are walking towards us being replaced by the next creature, which is the AI. And there's not a damn thing we can do about it.
I'm excited about it. I'm so excited about it. I'm like, so
we'll all be dead by the time we have to report to the robot overlords.
Yeah, but like whatever happens in my lifetime, I really want to see. There are a few other people. One other person you should check out, Joshua Bach. He did an amazing interview with two amazing interviews with Lex Friedman. I think you will enjoy. Thank you so much, Raoul. I want to be respectful of your time. I hope that we can have you back.
Great. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Awesome. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Raoul Pal. In case you do not follow Real Vision, be sure to get on that right now. If you enjoy this podcast, subscribe to it on Apple, Spotify, or any other one of your favorite podcast channels. And don't forget to give it a 5-star rating and write a review. The full interviews are also available on my YouTube channel, The Somi Arian Show.